workouts.
Do y'all think that the first stage should be dumbed down, or is it like if you don't got it, you don't got it?
I think there can be a good mix, and here would be my suggestion to fix it all. And I know we've talked about this plenty of times, but we just make the sport known and knowable. Here are the standards of the sport. Here are the movements we're going to test. Here are the time domains we're going to test. We're going to have 3 different time domains in the open. It's going to be 3 tests. And we can even use those broad concepts that he used. There's going to be something new every single year, but it's going to be within these confines. There's going to be something heavy every year, but it's going to be within these confines. It's going to be something that is a repeat every year.
When would that have been announced?
So you announce that now, and then every year after the games, you announce any new movements that come out, which again, we've talked about in the past, but it's like, here are the essentially, we would be moving into a direction where it looks like any other sport in the world, where they have a rule book. Every year the rule book is updated, but usually it's just slight changes. Like the NFL, they're changing the way that they call timeouts, like something silly like that. But every NFL team knows, every player knows, and then they still know the standards of what a catch is, what's not a catch, what's a pass interference. And so they play the game, and when people watch, they understand the game. There are no questions or confusions as to what's going on, unless you're just brand new to the sport.
Yeah.
With us, even the people that have been doing it for years don't know the standards. And you talk about people being disillusioned. It's because there's these new standards every year. There's random stuff that comes out, and we're not getting tests of fitness that they call fitness. And so if we just said, like, other people are doing this well. High Rocks is doing this very well right now.
Yeah.
Here are our standard tests. Train for it. Let's see who the best is. And it doesn't have to be like, here are our 3 tests, right? But it's just like, we are going to do these 36 movements. We can put them in any order that we want, but here are the confines of that.
Yeah. I mean, I like that in terms of just creating structure to it. I still think that it would be very hard to create that change without major uproar in the market. Because then a lot of the people that love and defend what classic CrossFit is, or you'd have to say, like, the first step of the open, or maybe just stop calling it a test of fitness. Just call it the sport of CrossFit.
That's
just
what
like,
I mean.
hey, step one
For the love
is
of
just,
God, let's please
It's
do
not,
that.
it's not, but it's not a test of
That would
fitness. To your
fix so
point.
much issues, right?
We could pick out almost every single open workout. I have the list of all 60, whatever it is now, right
on
here on this
font 0.
It's on 8 font, which is actually really hard for me to see. I gotta pull it in my face. It's actually, side note, my eyes have gotten so much worse, man. Like I was driving down the highway and I'm like squinting at the sign the other day.
Yeah.
But
same.
Yeah, my nighttime driving is not what it used to be.
everything's like super bright too. Other people's lights.
Yeah.
You guys notice that?
Is this? I mean, this is getting older.
Yeah, it is. But if I pull these up, we could look at them and find holes in the fitness test.
Yeah.
Because we're, again, trying to define
If I pulled them up, even though they're right.
Yeah. If I
I
lifted it up to my eyeballs right now.
Yeah.
But you guys get the point where I can look at these, I can nitpick each one. But if it just is simply like, here are the standards, then you can no longer nitpick it because we know like these are the things that are going to be tested, and so what?
We've shouted from the rooftops, I think more than anybody, that this should be known and knowable. I think we even have an episode about kill the unknown and unknowable, something like that. And what do you think if we had Boz here, what do you think he would say to that? What do you think the pushback on their side is? Or do you think they're back there like, people like these guys do have a point and maybe we should consider it?
I doubt it.
I don't know. I feel like they're thoughtful enough that they probably think that, but they also want they're the OGs, right?
It seems like it would save them so much headache if they just did this.
It would, and it would also save the sport. CrossFit has continued to talk about wanting to grow things, and I know that there's 2 different sides to this. There's the sports side, and then there's just like the health and wellness side. But again, if you want to grow the health and wellness side, you still need to grow the sport, because that's how a lot of people go into the gym. They see Rich Froning back in the day, or they see Frazier a couple years ago, or Tia Toomey, and those become heroes to them, and so therefore they go into the gym and say, I want to do what they're doing. And to do that well, we need to have a sport that's exciting to watch, and an exciting sport is not a random sport. Like, I know that they think that, but if that was the case, other sports would have just randomized stuff thrown at it all the time.
Rules.
They would, but no one does that, because most people understand, and business people understand, that you have to have structure and common sense built into that so that you can grow it.
Yeah, well, repeatability, practice time, so people can get better at doing it, which means that the whole level of the game goes up and you're less likely to have heats of people that can't do things because you didn't test it ahead of time. Like, I think those are the problems that it would solve.
Yeah.
In terms of viewing it.
How is it that all of the other endurance sports continue to grow through the pandemic? Now, High Rocks is through the roof, at least from where they were.
What is High Rocks?
It's basically like kind of like a one event CrossFit competition with a lot of running. So you basically it's 10 rounds, I think. right? 10 rounds, and you run an 800 meter, and then at every step after the 800 meter, you do something. There's like wall balls as one of them, dragging a sled as one of them. There's ski erg as one
they're
of them.
standardized.
It's always the same race.
So you run 800 meters, do something. 800 meters, do something.
I think it's 800. It's running some specific length and then doing a mixed modal activity that's the same every time. So it's just a race.
Here's the thing.
Always the same.
That's just one example. It's standardized. But the same thing is true with Ironman or other triathlons. The circuits are still buzzing and people are doing it. And the market is huge.
Yeah.
The money, the revenue that comes in is huge. People can do it because they know what the tests are. They know what the standards are. And they can easily get into it. CrossFit's the same way, that people can easily walk into a gym, but because we have so much confusion around the sport, I think it raises this barrier to entry that makes it very hard. You need a ladder to climb over the wall, essentially.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, I think that those sports, or any sport that recreational people are doing, they like because they can track their progress.
If it's standardized, you could.
Yes. You can't in the current system. The only thing you can do is use your ranking against the worldwide ranking to see if you're getting better. But that doesn't account for the fact that tests are completely different. So if I walk into 2021 and which one was it, 2021 or 2022? That was like it was last year's 3 tests, and it was all body weight, like very body weight and long. Yes. Please pull up your document.
Now, Brannen, you have a piece of glitter on your nose that's looking like a nose ring.
I love it.
This is called having a daughter.
Having your daughter's a princess.
She puts makeup on her face. She's 4. And
on
now
your face.
Well, mine too, and usually my nails. So it was the wall walks, dumbbell snatch, box jump over, then deadlift, bar facing burpee, and then pull up, double under, thruster.
Okay, so for me, that test those are my 3 tests for the year, and I'm getting smashed on them relative to the field. Now, I'm kind of upset, but also happy that I got hurt before this year's open and didn't want to take the risk of farthering the damage to my ankle. So I sat out. But if you objectively look at these tests and say, okay, well, this is what you're going to do relative to the overall body of people that are in CrossFit, workout number 1 would have been pretty good for me as a bigger person, because there was moving the barbell, there was the wall ball that slowed people down, and I'm pretty good at muscle up. So if I got there, I could get a couple of them, and it's like, okay, well, I just squeak through a test with having being strong and having better skills than some of the other
It's a
people.
much different test than a 15-minute AMRAP, a wall walks, dumbbell snatch, and
box jump over.
Sure.
Then the second workout, I could have walked and done burpee pull-ups, and I'm pretty good at like falling down to the ground and doing bodybuilding type stuff from wrestling and from a lot of bodybuilding, and I'm not that good at distance running. So I could have masked my weakness on 2A. Thrustering would have been pretty good for me because I'm a 225-pound person. So just like, even if I'm weak relative to the field, I'll move more weight just because I'm bigger, and the test doesn't account for that. So there's 3 tests that kind of line up in my favor. And then the last one is hand balancing stuff, which I'm pretty good at for those first 2 bars. And then I would have got bottlenecked by the strict handstand push-ups, but so would a lot of the lighter guys would have got bottled by the snatches at 135. So again, because those handstand push-ups weren't in the front of the workout and it put some of my strengths in the beginning part of it, it was another test that could have been pretty good for me. So had I done this year's open healthy, most likely it would have looked like my overall fitness progress was so much better. But I don't really know that because I didn't retest those same workouts. It's not like I did a 15-minute breather. It's just like, all right, well, relative to the world, I'm better at these tests than these tests because I'm bigger and better skilled and less engine-y as a person. So when that happens to people year after year and they're working so hard at something and then they show up to the open and the tests all change or they got more complex or something, changes in the standard, every single metric of their fitness could have got better. Their M, their G, their W, all their 10 general skills. And then they come into the one thing they get to do for their whole season and they get smashed and they're like, oh, I got worse. And we've been combating that for years. I'm like, dude, you're not worse. You're so much more fit than you were before. It's just like, these are 5 random tests that they pick out that just happen to expose you on 3 of them. And last year you got 5 tests that didn't expose you. And you kind of got lucky with the testing body. So,
or the opposite, where they're like, oh my God, I'm so much better.
Yeah. Oh, I don't need to train because I got better. Yeah. So I think triathlon and these other things, like I know personally I'm engaged by the feeling of progress. And I get hurt more when I do classic CrossFit. It's more ballistic. It's always training to fatigue. It's swinging gymnastics on a big body. So like my training actually looks more like the methodology of CrossFit, where if I do gymnastics, it's more hollow bodies and more handstand holds and more hanging L holds and more actual gymnastics training. And my endurance work is like in the pool or, and that doesn't make me a good CrossFitter, like in the sport sense, but it might make me well-rounded in CrossFit.
Well, that's another question, and maybe this goes off topic a little bit, but I think that is a challenge that they have with the sport in that you cannot follow CrossFit methodology, the training, the health and fitness side, and what they post on main site, and be a games CrossFitter. They may disagree with that. I've heard them say that you can. I promise you, like
there's no good evidence of somebody just doing one workout a day in a completely random sense.
I think I could say it like very healthily, guarantee that even the high level athletes now, if they just did that, then they probably would not do well at the games, or they wouldn't even be able to make the games because the volume is so high. And
unless it's somebody that already did all the volume. Like they trained for 8 years on a lot of volume and then went to that.
Yeah, even then it would be hard to make the games though with how much volume is required now in
just
semifinals. Correct. But the point of that is if they followed, like, let's say what you do. So instead of doing a bunch of kipping gymnastics and they know there's going to be 150 chest to bars and 75 toe to bar at the games in one workout, and they're just doing hollow body holds and kip swings to make sure their shoulders feel good. They get there. Now the risk of injury is even higher, and the likelihood of them being able to even do it is going to be relatively low. Yeah. And so they have to train in a way that is like the test. And so maybe they're not doing the same amount of volume, but they have to do hundreds of kip movements every single week and hundreds of squats and run for miles and miles. And so there's just a lot of eccentric loading that happens on the body. And to do that for a long period of time and stay healthy, I think is a testament to the amazing athletes we have. Yeah. But what does it do long-term to the athlete?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it would be better for the sport, for example, in the kipping gymnastics things, put strict handstand push-ups or strict pull-ups in the open, create some sort of a standard that's semi-enforceable and put it in there. Now, if you did that and it was a thruster pull-up workout, it would be really boring because people can't it'd be like, okay, I got to failure, I'm going to stand. It's like watching people do strict handstand push-ups after they fail, and people don't like it. They like that they could use momentum. Right. But maybe if you did something like that and say, all right, well, your kipping comes in quarterfinals. Once you prove you have the requisite capacity to move up, then you can do that. And then your higher level swinging gymnastics comes later on. I think it's a problem if you're saying that stage one is supposed to be universal, and then you're also expecting it to be cool and exciting for pros. The other solution to this whole thing is make the open as a thing, and then make the quarterfinals as the first step of the sport that anybody can pay to get into, and don't make it a qualification thing.
Yeah,
it's just like, all right,
I agree with that.
You want to do quarterfinals? Bam, just sign up and do it. It's the first step. This open is a completely different thing. It's not supposed to be the sorter for quarterfinals, because then you just come into the same kind of issues that they're dealing with.
I wonder if that would change the leaderboard.
We want everyone's $20.
Yeah, I know. There's a mathematical.
That's not a knock on them. Yeah. It's like there's so much issues I feel like that gets created by having this company over here that's also trying to run the sport.
Yeah.
Like in my head, and I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. What is Hillary? I don't know shit about fuck. It feels like CrossFit should be the sponsor of the sport, not the people running the sport.
Like the operational runners.
Just like who's the title sponsor right now? Knowable. It should be the. It could be the
CrossFit
or whatever you end up calling the sport. CrossFit. But it doesn't seem like they need to be the people running the sport. And I bet you if they didn't have to run the sport, they'd go, oh my God.
I don't know. I think the people that are in it, they've been around for such a long time.
Well, no, those people would probably still run the sport, but the company CrossFit having
like they
to
would
fund
off
and run the sport.
Yeah.
Man, I would love to get a little behind the scenes look at what they're talking about, how they're thinking about what the feedback looks like, because like people were upset about, let's say, the thruster standard, and rightfully so. Yeah. It was just a bad standard. Yeah. And again, I said this in the last podcast, I understand that you make mistakes. We've made mistakes too when we're programming stuff. We do these simulations and people were complaining already about the master simulation we're doing, right? So things happen, but it's just like, where are they getting that feedback and changing things, or is it just always stick to your guns and this is our methodology, this is the way we're always going to do it? I just think that if we keep going down the path that we're on, it's going to be very hard to grow the sport.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. So this is another bad standards. That's the reason why people hated this open. But again, it's a recency bias, I think, because bad standards reinforcement has been a problem. Like, there have been videos public of high profile athletes doing workouts not to the standard they had by such a long shot that should have been invalidated, and those people shouldn't have been able to continue, that ended up going to the games and placing at the CrossFit Games. So it's like, all right, well, you haven't been enforcing properly as a sport because of fame or notoriety or getting people to the highest level. There have been standards that have come out. Like, one of the handstand push-up standards that came out in the past, I had athletes that literally could not get to the point that they could get their feet over the line to do reps ever. Like, they just couldn't do it. And people would say, well, oh, that's because your body line. You're not a good enough gymnast to be able to pull your hands in and tuck your pelvis and get your thoracic cage more extended. But the other thing is, like, well, maybe you didn't test enough body types to make sure that you had a standard that made sense for everybody. And I think if they, opened up the community and made it like, hey, we're going to get these tests done sooner, it's going to be more known and knowable, and you got more people involved, you can test and you could figure out, like, hey, we're going to try this standard for next year. We want, everybody to test it. And then if there's something wrong with it, or you feel like you can't tag us at CrossFit Games and let us know. And you could build the standard over the course of a year with community feedback, instead of just releasing something and be like, all right, well, you guys made this decision in a bubble without getting any feedback, and you were wrong. And now you're left having to just deal with it. Like, the standard for the thruster was so unclear. It's like, well, one continuous fluid motion overhead. And it's like, all right, well, does that mean just the bar is continuous and fluid? Does that mean that somebody, if they're pressing out and they get to failure and it doesn't move?
Do you think they'd still defend that now, or do you think they'd be like,
I think they would defend it because they kind of have to defend themselves.
Well, on a homeboy level, after a couple beers, you think they're
like, oh, we fucked up.
Yeah, we did kind of mess up.
I hope so. I mean, but again, it's happened since, like, people are saying, oh, this open sucks because of that. And I'm like, well, that's been going on since 2011. It just means that nothing's changed. Like, that's the bigger issue for me.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I meant, is that it's been now 12 years and the same issues continue to arise. At what point do new people come in, or do they listen to the feedback of the community that care? I mean, we're so passionate about the sport. We're passionate about the people that we coach. We're passionate about the community in general. And yet I feel like sometimes things don't change. And to grow the sport the way that we want to, and the way I think that all the community wants to, we have to have changes that make sense for growth.
Let's talk about that.
Well, hold on. The thing, they might actually be getting growth. I mean, the open...
Hope you enjoyed this clip of the Corpus Animus Podcast with Max and Brannen. To hear the full episode where Max defends why this was his favorite CrossFit Open, why the sport, being unknown and unknowable, continues to cause problems, a discussion on the growth of the sport or lack thereof, and the future of AI, deepfakes, and ChatGPT. Check out the audio version on all major podcast providers, or peep the other clips here on YouTube.